The internet was supposed to be the great equalizer, a digital frontier where every voice, every idea, and every perspective could find its audience. For years, that promise gave rise to independent creators, whistleblowers, and thinkers, who bypassed traditional media to speak directly to the world. But hidden behind the curtain of algorithms and policies lies a practice few understand, and even fewer can prove the phenomenon of shadow banning. What is shadow banning? On the surface, it's the invisible silencing of a voice without an outright ban. Your content is technically still there, your channel is still active, but your reach is cut off at the knees. Videos don't get recommended. Notifications mysteriously fail to reach subscribers. Search visibility vanishes. The content creator is left shouting into a void, with no explanation, no appeal, and often no knowledge that it's even happening. YouTube, the world's largest video platform, denies shadow banning outright. They say they enforce guidelines transparently, and that reach depends purely on user engagement and community standards. Yet the stories from creators tell a different tale. Independent journalists, political commentators, cultural critics, and even harmless entertainers have reported sudden, inexplicable drops in viewership. Their subscribers, loyal fans, say they never saw the uploads. Comments disappear into moderation, black holes. The channel technically exists, but its visibility is throttled down to near zero. That is the essence of shadow banning, the punishment you can't name, the silence you can't fight. To understand shadow banning, you need to understand the machine that powers YouTube, the algorithm. For every video, a web of metrics decides whether it will soar to millions or suffocate in obscurity. Click-through rates, watch time, likes, shares, user retention, these factors determine what the algorithm recommends. On the surface, it sounds fair, even scientific, but here's the catch. The algorithm is not neutral. It is programmed, tweaked, and fine-tuned by human hands, guided by corporate and political pressures. Behind the cold logic of data lies a set of values about what content is safe, advertiser-friendly, and acceptable. And anything that strays too far from those definitions risks being quietly buried. This isn't conspiracy theory, it's the lived experience of thousands of creators. They pour time, effort, and creativity into their work, only to see their views plummet overnight. No warning, no strike, no veto. Just a sudden and permanent invisibility cloak thrown over their channel. And when they ask why, the answers are vague, if any come at all. The algorithm is always changing, they're told. Focus on making engaging content. But how do you engage an audience that can't even find you? The irony is thick. YouTube began as a platform where ordinary people could bypass gatekeepers and build empires from their bedrooms. Now, it increasingly resembles the very media structures it once disrupted. Instead of gatekeepers in suits, we have gatekeepers in code lines of algorithmic logic that reward conformity and punish dissent. Safe, sanitized, advertiser-friendly content gets pushed. Anything remotely controversial, disruptive, or challenging to power is throttled under the guise of safety. And make no mistake, shadow banning isn't just about politics. It affects creators across every niche. Musicians whose songs trigger automated copyright systems, even when it's their own work. Gamers whose commentary gets flagged for inappropriate language, health channels that challenge mainstream narratives, educators discussing sensitive historical or cultural issues. The silencing cuts across categories because at its core, shadow banning is about risk reduction for YouTube, not for creators. From YouTube's perspective, the logic is simple. Advertisers want a clean, controversy-free environment. Governments want misinformation contained. Users should be kept scrolling happily, without friction or outrage that might drive them away. So the algorithm becomes the tool to manage attention, filter voices, and engineer a safe experience. But in doing so, it undermines the very freedom and diversity that made the platform thrive. Consider the psychological toll on creators. Imagine investing years into building an audience, nurturing a community, and then watching it collapse overnight, not because your content suddenly got worse, but because an unseen switch was flipped. The uncertainty breeds paranoia. Every word, every topic, every thumbnail becomes a potential trigger. Creators begin self-censoring, watering down their messages, avoiding anything risky, all in the desperate hope of staying visible. In the end, shadow banning doesn't just silence voices, it reshapes them, molding creators into safer, blender versions of themselves. But why doesn't YouTube admit to shadow banning? Because to acknowledge it would mean acknowledging manipulation. It would mean admitting that users aren't fully in control of what they see, and that creators aren't competing on a level playing field. Instead, the company frames it as algorithmic adjustments, content moderation, or promotion of authoritative sources. Harmless words that disguise the reality. Voices are being selectively erased from the digital town square. The truth is, shadow banning thrives in the shadows precisely because it is deniable. When a video is deleted, there's outrage. When a channel is banned, there's resistance. But when visibility quietly vanishes, creators blame themselves. They think the audience lost interest, that their content just isn't good enough. It's psychological warfare without fingerprints. censorship without accountability. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Yet, despite the silence, the truth keeps leaking out. Creators compare notes. Audiences complain. Independent researchers analyze data. Patterns emerge. Certain topics trigger visibility drops. Certain phrases vanish from comments. Certain spikes in popularity are mysteriously capped. The evidence is circumstantial but overwhelming, pointing to a system designed not to ban, but to bury. So where does this leave us? If shadow banning is real, and if platforms like YouTube will never admit it, what can creators and viewers do? The first step is awareness. Understanding that the content you see on YouTube is not the full spectrum, it is the curated slice the algorithm deems safe. The second step is decentralization. Creators increasingly turn to alternative platforms, email lists, direct fan support, anything that bypasses the algorithm's chokehold. And the third step is collective pressure. The more audiences demand transparency, the harder it becomes for platforms to hide behind vague statements. Shadow banning is not the future of the internet, it's the present. It is the invisible hand guiding what billions of people see, think, and discuss every day. And until it is dragged out of the shadows, creators will remain at the mercy of an opaque system that pretends to be neutral while quietly enforcing conformity. The truth about shadow banning on YouTube is simple, yet terrifying. It's real. It's widespread, and it's shaping the culture of the internet without our consent. The platform that once promised freedom of expression now practices a subtler form of censorship, one that doesn't silence with bans, but with invisibility. And in many ways, that silence is more suffocating, more insidious, and more difficult to fight. Creators must adapt, audiences must question, and all of us must recognize that what we see online is not the whole truth, it is the filtered version that powerful systems allow us to see. The battle for digital freedom is no longer about who gets banned, but about who gets buried. And the question that remains is, how many voices will we lose to silence before we demand change?